You'll never get mixed up with a Chinese goddess.
No, John.
That's the worst thing that can happen. Very worst.
Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, formerly known as iTunes, or follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. So please subscribe when you're finished listening. You can also go to classicmovierev.com to read notes, bios, and other random movie thoughts. I really need to make an extra appeal. I need a few more reviews over there in iTunes. So if you haven't reviewed the show yet, jump over there and give me a review. I'll take an honest review, as long as it's a 5 or a 4. Whatever's fair. Also, look for the Film Noir ABC children's book coming out soon. More details to follow. Today's movie is Three Strangers, 1946. And yes, it's another Lorre Greenstreet pairing. So I'm a little obsessed. This Warner Brothers film is also known as Three Men and a Girl, 1946. John Huston was one of the screenwriters, and it was based around a statue and has two of the people from the Maltese Falcon, 1941. Odd. IMDb.com has this movie rated at 7.0, while RottenTomatoes.com has it as a 60% audience liked. New York Times film critic Bosley Carruthers wrote that this film is, quote, is full-bodied melodrama of a shrewd and sophisticated sort. Never so far away from reason that it is wholly incredible, but obviously manufactured fiction, it makes a tolerably tantalizing show, reaching some points of fascination in a few of its critical scenes. Unquote. Yeah, it's that good. This is a highly entertaining and exciting film. Don't mess with destiny. Actors.
Right, and I'm a Shakespearean actor.
The wonderful actor and laugher Sidney Greenstreet, an all-around model of male handsomeness, was Jerome K. Arbuthnot. Greenstreet was first covered in episode 100, The Maltese Falcon, 1941. Also first covered in that same film was Peter Lorre, whose role as Johnny West in this film is one of his best, and that's saying a lot. The devilishly handsome Alan Napier played David Shackelford, estranged husband to Crystal. Napier was first covered in the awful John Wayne film Big Jim McLean, 1952. Ian Wolfe was uncredited as Gilkey, the barrister, or lawyer if you're an American. Wolfe was first covered in episode 38, 99 River Street, 1953. Others from episode 152, The Verdict, 1946, include Holmes Herbert, who was uncredited as Sir Robert, Arthur Shields, who was the prosecutor, Rosalind Ivan as the slightly crazy Lady Rhea Belladon, and Joan Lorring was Icy Crane. Great name. Geraldine Fitzgerald played the role of Crystal Shackelford. Fitzgerald was born in 1913 in Ireland. She made her acting debut in local theater in 1932. This is where she first worked with Orson Welles. From 1934 to 37, she worked in English films. Her first husband induced her to move to New York. Fitzgerald made her Broadway debut in 1938 in a Mercury Theater production. She signed with Warner Brothers, then it was off to Hollywood. Fitzgerald hit it out of the park with her first American movie. She played the role of Isabel in Wuthering Heights, 1939, and received a Best Supporting Actress Oscar nomination. Don't peak too early! That same year she was in Dark Victory, 1939 with Bette Davis. She likely lost the Bridget O'Shaughnessy role to Mary Astor in The Maltese Falcon, 1941, because of struggles with Jack Warner. Other films include Shining Victory, 1941, The Gay Sisters, 1942, Watch on the Rhine, 1943, Wilson, 1944, and Three Strangers, 1946. She continued to refuse roles and got suspended. She split her time between stage and character work. Her later movies include 10 North Frederick, 1958, The Pawnbroker, 1964, Rachel, 1968, Harry and Tonto, 1974, and Author, 1981, although she was only 21 years older than star Dudley Moore. Her last film was the Rodney Dangerfield Mutt, Easy Money, 1983. Fitzgerald died at the age of 91 in 2005. Peter Whitney played career criminal Timothy Delaney, although he went by Gabby most often. Whitney was born in 1916 in New Jersey. After his graduation from the Exeter Academy, this large man moved to L.A., where he studied at the Pasadena Community Playhouse and worked in summer stock theater as well. At the beginning of World War II, Whitney started acting in tough guy roles for Warner Brothers. His films include Underground, 1941, 9 Lives Are Not Enough, 1941, Blues in the Night, 1941, Action in the North Atlantic, 1943, Destination Tokyo, 1943, Mr. Skiffington, 1944, the comedy Murder, He Says, 1945, and Three Strangers, 1946, before leaving Warner Brothers. His later films include The Big Heat, 1953, The Notorious Lone Wolf, 1946, Blonde Alibi, 1946, The Brute Man, 1946, and In the Heat of the Night, 1967. Whitney spent most of the 1950s working on popular television shows. Sadly, he died at the age of 55 in 1972. Doris Lloyd appeared as Miss Proctor. Lloyd played the aptly named Mrs. Watchley in The Time Machine, 1960. If she shows up again, I'll give her the full review treatment. Story.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
The movie begins with a script telling how humans have always used idols to attribute responsibility for their actions. The only reason the 3 people in this story met was because the Chinese goddess Kuan Yin. Their fate may or may not have been the same, except for what happened that night. Set in London in the spring of 1938, Chinese New Year, which should have been January 31st in the year of the tiger, and not hardly spring. An attractive lady wearing a leopard skin coat is walking the street, making eye contact with men. One rather rotund man turns and follows her. Stalker. He follows her all the way back to her apartment. She keeps checking to make sure he keeps up. Outside, he tries to introduce himself, but she won't let him. They go up to her apartment, and there is another smaller man there. The larger man is immediately suspicious. He wants to leave, but she begs him to stay. The lady says the point is that the 3 are strangers. The lady tells the 2 men that she has a statue of the Chinese goddess Kuan Yin.
You've both been very patient with me. The reason that I brought you up here was to meet Kuan Yin. She's a very ancient personage. The goddess of fortune and destiny, of life and death. There's a legend that at midnight on Chinese New Year, Kuan Yin will open her eyes and her heart to 3 strangers. This happens to be the night.
Yes?
She also says the goddess rules over life and death as well as fortune and destiny. She got it when her and her husband lived in Asia. The lady says that at midnight on the Chinese New Year, the goddess will open up her eyes and heart to 3 strangers and grant their wishes. The big man says the statue is made of bronze and can't open her eyes. He says he only believes in what he can see. The small man lights cigarettes for the group and offers the big man the 3rd light. He refuses because he knows 3 off a match is bad luck. I've always heard this came from World War I. When the first soldier lights, the enemy saw him. On the 2nd he aims, and on the 3rd he fires. Bad luck for the 3rd guy. I've also heard the same about rattlesnakes. The first person wakes it up, the 2nd makes it mad, and the 3rd gets bitten. I wouldn't test this. This saying may be as old as the Crimean War, or it may be the result of people trying to sell more matches. The 3 have to make the same wish, and the lady has it all worked out. The one wish that can make all the others work is money. The small guy has a sweepstakes ticket. The other 2 buy into the ticket and decide that it all must be put towards the race.
Do you realize what we are asking Kuan Yin to do? We want her to reshuffle a hand that the destiny has already dealt us. Why? Because, we hope to get higher cards. A little presumptuous on our part, isn't it?
The big man has them sign the ticket as part of their agreement. The lady is Crystal Shackelford, Geraldine Fitzgerald. The little fellow is Johnny West, Peter Lorre, and the big man is Jerome K. Arbuthney, Sidney Greenstreet. Crystal places the signed ticket in the drawer of the statue. Arbuthney reveals that he would like to be invited to join the Barristers Club. Crystal wishes her husband to be back. West says he would buy a bar. Just before midnight, Crystal lights candles, and they all wait as Big Ben chimes. The candles blow out, and when they relight them, Johnny and Crystal think that the statue has changed and opened her eyes. The two men begin to leave, and everyone is formally introduced. As they go downstairs, David Shackelford, Alan Napier, Crystal's estranged husband, who is supposed to be in Canada, walks up the steps. David is there to tell Crystal that he wants a divorce because of her past indiscretions. He is waiting for a new job and has a fancy new Canadian girlfriend. Crystal rages and David leaves. Johnny is laid up in the Blue Crown pub. Icy Crane, Joan Lorring, knocks on the locked door and is let in to see Johnny. Icy is very fond of Johnny, but warns him he has to come back to the room.
All right.
The Chinese say that haste is the one unpardonable sin. Oh,
Yes,
Alfred,
yes,
anything
yes,
you do
yes.
for this lady, you do for me. It's a very special friend of mine, as the best friendships are made on short acquaintance and last a very brief time.
She says that Gabby is mad that he slipped out. Icy takes the drunken Johnny back, and the landlady, Mrs. Proctor, Doris Lloyd, sees him come in and connects the two men staying in the room with a recent robbery and murder of a policeman. Gabby, Peter Whitney, lets Icy and Johnny back in, but he is really mad at Johnny for leaving the hideout. Apparently they did do the robbery with another man named Fallon. Fallon is under arrest, but Johnny was not really involved. Fallon is on trial, and the prosecutor, Arthur Shields, states that there were two men with him when the murder was committed. Back in the room, Johnny is reading about the case to Gabby. Johnny doesn't remember anything. Gabby tells Johnny that Fallon got him drunk and told him to be a lookout. Johnny is totally innocent. Mrs. Proctor comes into the men's room and prods them for the rent and raises the rent because she knows they are wanted. Johnny has to stop Gabby from killing her. The two men leave the boarding house for a new hideout. Arbuthney has a lawyer's office set up like Ebenezer Scrooge. He has a young guy and an old guy that work too hard and he screams at all the time. One of Arbuthney's rich clients, Lady Rhea Belladon, Rosalind Ivan, comes to the office. He shows that he has deposited the check, and she says Lord Belladon is thankful for what Arbuthney is doing for the widow. Apparently, she talks to her dead husband on a regular basis.
Lord Belladon wishes me to thank you for all you've done.
Indeed. It's very kind of him.
He knows how well you're watching after my interests. He tells me to trust you implicitly.
You've, talked with him recently?
Yesterday night we were together.
He's in good spirits, I hope.
Excellent. Of course it taxes him getting through. It's a long, arduous journey from the other plane to this.
She says her dead husband advises her on everything and has high confidence in Arbuthney. When Lady Belladon leaves, Arbuthney calls a stockbroker and asks about selling the speculative South African stock he has purchased. The way he holds the trust's law books, it is clear that it is Lady Belladon's money he has been speculating with. The broker gives him a tip that the stock is going to make a turn for the good. Arbuthney lets the stock stay open. Back at the jail, Fallon, Icy, and his lawyer, Ian Wolfe, are going over the plan. In addition to Icy's false testimony, they plan to bring in Major Beach, Stanley Logan, to lie as well. On the stand, Icy is cool as well. Ice? They totally buy her story. Then they bring up Major Beach. He tells how he spent the evening with Fallon and Icy dealing with the Oxford movement. The Oxford movement is easily viewed as the re-Catholicing of the Church of England. The prosecutor then brings up the fact that Beach was only a private in the military until he was arrested for selling drugs and has a pretty developed rap sheet. With his alibi blown, Fallon has his lawyer change his plea to guilty, and he says he will tell on the others and say that they, not he, were the ones that did the killing. John and Gabby are hiding under the bridge in London. Icy, who fled the court, eventually finds the two with the help of the bartender from the Blue Crown. Johnny and Gabby know from the newspaper that Fallon lied and put the blame on them. Johnny is taking it all in stride, and Gabby just wants revenge. Icy has it fixed up where they can get a car and flee to Scotland. The only one that is not known to the police is Johnny, so he is selected to get the car and pick the two others up. At night, Johnny and Icy have a touching conversation. His hiding has forced him to become sober. Johnny explains why he drinks.
I ain't never seen you eat. Not since you've been with us. This is the first time.
I think I'm sober.
Gentleman nature.
Was born one.
The booze?
No, not the booze. The psyche. You know about the psyche?
Psyche.
It's what makes human beings of us. Whenever it itches, I take a drink. Tonight, it's itching like the devil.
Won't be long now, Johnny. Just till we can get away, and then you can drink all you want, I promise you. I'm going to stick with you, Johnny. I'm going to look after you.
What?
Wherever you go, that's where I'm going to.
Icy pledges her love and undying devotion to Johnny. When it's time for Johnny to get the car, they make arrangements to meet by the Blue Crown. That sounds like a terrible plan. Gabby is a little worried that Johnny will get drunk and mess up the escape. Johnny gets the car and waits outside as planned. A flower lady offers to sell Johnny some violets. At first he refuses, but later follows her into the Blue Crown where he buys the flowers for Icy. Johnny refuses a drink and a detective quickly moves in and arrests him. He says he almost got away because he turned down the drink. Gabby and Icy go to look for Johnny and see that he is arrested. They get in the car and Icy finds the flowers. Crystal goes to see Sir Robert, Holmes Herbert, the man that recommended her husband for his posting. She lies that her husband is running around and will cause a scandal if given the job.
Oh, he'll come back to me. I know he will. As soon as the new wears off. She's nothing but a passing thing in his life.
You know, typical ex-wife stuff. Crystal invites David to visit her apartment. Crystal makes the pitch that all of the other men mean nothing and she wants him back. David is not buying it. He knows about what she did with Sir Robert and the job. Crystal throws every line and touch in the book at David. Finally she kisses him and he turns away. Crystal smashes a lit cigarette into the back of David's hand. He momentarily chokes her, but then he stops when he realizes he is being manipulated. When David leaves, Crystal calls a detective to find the location of David's girlfriend Janet, Marjorie Reardon. Janet is wearing a hat that is definitely inspired by The Wizard of Oz 1939. It is some kind of hybrid between a witch hat and the top of a pumpkin hat that a munchkin might wear. David wants to end the relationship. Janet is not for that. Janet wants to talk to Crystal, and David flatly refuses. Janet goes back to her room, which is in a different location than where David is staying. Crystal is waiting in her room. Run! Crystal lays it on thick and says that David has been visiting her and staying the night, and their relationship is strong, and the twist of the knife that she is pregnant with David's baby.
I'm Mrs. Shackelford. Oh. I think he sincerely believed that he was in love with you and that he wanted to be free. But when he left me the next morning, he wasn't at all certain. Mrs. Shackelford, I don't see how you dare say such a thing. Aren't you forgetting he's my husband? But David loves me. No, he didn't. It isn't true. He's very fond of you. Every time I've been with David, I've begged him to tell you that it was only fair to you. But he's afraid of hurting you, and so he keeps putting it off. You're making all this up. And I'm his wife. He belongs to me. But it isn't only David and I any longer. Miss Elliot, I've come to you because I must have him back. I must. David and I are going to have a child.
Crystal smiles with glee as she leaves a sobbing Janet behind. Arbuthney gets a letter from the stockbroker demanding a margin call on the stock account that has Lady Belladon's stolen money. If he can't pay the margin, he will lose all of the money. He blames the stockbroker and not himself. Arbuthney calls Lady Belladon and sets up an appointment for dinner. After dinner, he proposes to her, and she is quite taken aback as she is still in contact with her dead husband. She says the spirit is coming and sends him away without an answer. Johnny is sentenced to death row after he refuses to defend himself at trial. Arbuthney gets his application to the Barristers Club, but he gets hung up on the part where he needs 4 references for integrity and personal character. Just then, Lady Belladon arrives. Arbuthney believes it is to answer his proposal. She says her dead husband was furious and made accusations. She not only says no, she brings an examiner to check the books. Crazy like a fox. Old Arbuthney drops his club application to the floor and gives the day off to his 2 workers just like it was Christmas Eve. Arbuthney writes a letter to Lady Belladon, takes a revolver from his drawer, carefully places papers on the floor and prepares to do himself. With gun in hand, he sees Kuan Yin has won the sweepstakes and has the horse Corncracker. Arbuthnot goes to see Crystal, and they decide that since Johnny is in jail, they will not give him his share. The ticket is now worth £10,000, but will be much more if Corncracker wins the race.
Well, Mr. Arbuthnot, what do you think now?
As I said before, I am not one to believe in miracles, and yet...
And yet you're not unwilling to profit by them.
What about that fellow West, the murderer?
What about him?
He's got a share, shouldn't he be notified? £10,000 is worth and more.
It'll be worth many times more when the race is run.
If the horse we've drawn wins, yes. It would be foolish to count on that. The only sensible procedure is to sell our ticket for what we can get right now and let a speculator take the risk.
Oh, come now, Mr. Arbuthnot. That's not very sporting of you. Don't you remember that we agreed the ticket should not be divided? The entire sum must go in the race.
Arbuthnot wants to sell the ticket to speculators, but Crystal holds on to the original deal. Crystal only laughs at Arbuthnot's problems and what she did to David and Janet. Icy goes to see the prosecutor and tells the entire truth. It doesn't do any good for Johnny. They lock her up for perjury and say Johnny's sentence will stand. A policeman is taking the handcuffed Fallon to Reading Prison on a train. The cop says he hates squealers. Gabby comes down the aisle and pretends to be a conductor. When they open the door, Gabby throws a knife into Fallon's chest and then is peacefully arrested. Johnny is told that Fallon is dead and that Gabby did it. Fallon made a deathbed confession. On the way to the warden's office, he has a minute to make peace with Gabby through the cell bars. Gabby tells him that Icy is in jail. Johnny goes outside of the prison and is enjoying his freedom when a man tells him that Crystal has won the sweepstakes and has the horse Corncracker. He has gone in a flash to meet the two other owners of the ticket. David comes to see Janet after a couple of days. She has left for Canada without leaving word for David after what Crystal told her. The hotel clerk lets him know that Crystal was there. Arbuthnot makes a deal with a speculator and plans to sell the ticket to him. Shortly before the race, Arbuthnot is still demanding the ticket from Crystal when Johnny shows up. Johnny is happy. Arbuthnot tries to get Johnny to join him about the ticket, but he says it's up to Crystal. Arbuthnot says he is not a thief and is an honest man even though he has stolen. Crystal holds the line. Arbuthnot becomes increasingly agitated. With the horses coming to post, Arbuthnot grabs the statue of Kuan Yin and tries to take the ticket. He and Crystal start wrestling over the ticket and Arbuthnot crushes her head with the base of the statue. Johnny is sure she is dead.
All right, isn't she?
Clear 29 together. Outsider takes the lead.
She's not all right.
Mr. West.
She's dead.
Oh, no.
And now they're coming into the final stretch.
Maybe
Corncracker
she
is coming up.
Sometimes there's the appearance and the person's only unconscious.
I tell you, she's dead. She is dead.
Close finish. Neck and neck past the grandstand. They're coming to the finish. And Corncracker wins.
Corncracker.
Outsider second, Toy Bell third.
How much is it worth?
£30,000.
£30,000. £50,000 apiece. We're rich.
Aren't you forgetting something?
What?
Isn't there another name with ours on that ticket?
Oh. What are we to do?
First thing, the ticket has to be destroyed.
Big pardon.
Don't you see the agreement on the back of that ticket with our names? That's the only connection between her and us. Wouldn't look very good for either of us.
The race is being broadcast on the radio. Corncracker wins, but they can't cash in the ticket because it now has the murdered woman's name on the back. Johnny says he will take the ticket and destroy it. Arbuthnot falls completely apart. Johnny takes him out into the street and Arbuthnot becomes increasingly deranged. As they go out, David is waiting to go up. David has a gun and is going to murder Crystal. When he finds her dead, he quietly walks back out the door. You know, he doesn't pick up the murder weapon or get blood on himself or leave fingerprints. Good plan. Arbuthnot keeps saying that Crystal is the devil and murder has been done. A bobby comes and they take Arbuthnot into custody. Johnny quietly slips away and goes to the Blue Crown. Johnny sits down at a table and looks at the ticket. He is not drinking. Icy comes in and they are happy to see each other. He tells Icy to never get mixed up with a Chinese goddess, and the fault is not in the stars but in the selves.
Icy, don't ever get mixed up with a Chinese goddess.
No, Johnny.
That's the worst thing that can happen. Very worst.
Johnny, you're not in trouble again.
No, I'm not in trouble. Not anymore. Found out. Just in time.
Find out what?
Oh, that things don't just happen to us, that we can do something about them. The fault lies not in our stars, lies in ourselves. Yes. Some people have to go to prison to be free, and I even had to win a sweepstake ticket.
Sweepstake ticket? Johnny, do you
Yes,
remember?
that's it. The winning ticket.
Oh, Johnny. For a minute you had me believing it.
He tells her he has the winning sweepstakes ticket and sets it on fire. Icy laughs along with what she thinks is a good joke. Notes: I'm very confused. The goddess gave our Butney an invitation to the Barristers Club. It gave Crystal the return of her husband. It set David free from his crazy wife, but it rewarded and reformed Johnny. It gave him true love and the ability to not drink, but it cost Fallon and Gabby their lives. Okay, but why? Was Johnny pure and the other two ticket holders flawed and evil? I can't figure it out. Write me and tell me your theories. World famous short summary: never get mixed up with a Chinese goddess. It's the worst. Okay, I really need to push those reviews, so if you haven't given me a review yet, jump on over there and do that. It won't be too much longer till we'll get some news out on the ABC film noir book that's coming out around Halloween. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I really appreciate you spending the time listening. You can find connections to social media and email on my site at classicmovierev.com. There are links in the podcast show notes as well. Remember, this show is completely free and independent. All that I ask is that you jump over to Apple Podcasts and give me a review. It really helps the show get found. Beware the Moors.